Alto present.
Walt Vogel present.
Foster present.
Cook present.
Present.
Chang present.
Great. So is there anyone who, from the public, who wants to speak on any subject not on the agenda? None? Okay, let's go to the minutes. Anyone have a motion? Comments?
Move to approve.
Second? Anyone second?
I probably shouldn't since I wasn't here.
Okay.
Did you second? I'll second.
Okay, any comments, any questions? Okay, let's vote. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No opposition? Okay, agenda review and revisions. The agenda's fine. Any reports from commissioner meetings or events? Thanks, Jay. None. Director of Utilities report, please.
Thank you very much. I think I have to borrow one of these. Valerie Fong, Utilities Director. A few things to report on the sort of the great awards front. We have a gas safety awareness, American Public Gas Association Consumer Education Award for our gas safety outreach program. You'll hear a little bit more about this later when Debbie Katz gives a presentation on some of our communications efforts. In addition, the annual federally mandated telephone survey to 7,500 residential customers to gauge their gas safety awareness will be taking place next month. I don't remember if I've told you all of this, but our Utilities Control Center, which is for our electric system dispatch function, no longer has sufficient staffing to operate on a 24/7 basis. So effective earlier this month, electric emergency calls after 4 p.m. and before 6 a.m. are being switched to police dispatch. This process should be invisible to the calling customer, but you should know that this will result in delayed response times during those off hours. Typically, we have 5 system operators. We have one who is on medical leave, and we have 2 who were recently hired by the city of Santa Clara. They are now gone, and we are down to 2 dispatchers, which is why we cannot run a 7x24 operations function, and we are in the process of working through this. Just so you all know, typically training is anywhere from 6 months if they come fully trained, just to get familiar with our system, to up to 4 years to train somebody with absolutely no past knowledge. So we'll be in this different mode for quite some time, we anticipate. From the marketing front, events and workshops in the June and July period. We had a facilities managers meeting in June. It was well attended. This is where we meet with our large commercial customer facility managers. Topics included utility rates, financial forecasts, how to improve building operations, performance, and advanced lighting controls. We also have the Eco Home. We've done several tours. In June, we gave a marketing strategy presentation, and then we gave a tour to 2 large groups of international high school students who were participating in a Lead America course at Stanford on the subject of business innovation, bringing a sustainable business to market. Then in July, we hosted 40 students from provinces across China. They also got an Eco Home tour, and also we presented them with various educational games. They're primarily elementary school-age children from China were all part of the Little Cultural Ambassador Program, which is designed around sustainability learnings. Recent residential workshops included hands-on sheet mulching for sustainable lawn alternatives, whole house sustainable water management, green building renovations, and solar power basics 101. We were ranked number 1 for Palo Alto Green by DOE's National Renewable Energy Laboratory. It's the number 1 program in the country based on customer participation, and number 3 utility in terms of the renewables purchased as a % of total electric purchases. And we do want to make sure we thank Vice Chair Foster for catching what appeared to be a mathematical misrepresentation. So we did move up quite significantly in the rankings after he pointed that one out. Thank you. The Photovoltaic Partners Program was ranked. We surpassed Santa Clara. It felt good. Not that there's any competition, exactly. We support each other. The Photovoltaic Partners Program was ranked in the top 10 nationwide for the 4th year in a row for its contribution to the national promotion of solar power. Palo Alto ranked number 7 for cumulative installed overall solar capacity per utility customer. 1.8% of CPAU customers have a PV installation. We have a demand response program. So during the hot days at the beginning of July, 3 demand response events were called. In this program, we have 7 large commercial customers enrolled. 6 customers participated in the first event, while 5 participated on days 2 and 3. We verified load reductions of 350 to 400 kilowatts. And we're working with a local startup to demonstrate the potential for electric vehicle owners to contribute to energy reductions during demand response events. Event notifications were sent via text message to 16 vehicle owners in Palo Alto. Preliminary results show that vehicle charging was reduced by about 30% relative to the expected baseline. And lastly, a quick update on the Emerging Technology Program. The Emerging Technology Program has received 16 applications over 5 quarters since its inception in July 2012, its launch in July 2012. And the status of them is in your quarterly report. An additional 3 applications were received by the July 15 quarterly deadline. These applications want to test technologies related to commercial building, heating, and cooling systems, lighting controls, and mobile application development for local government needs. In addition to testing technologies, the program connects applicants with other interested parties, such as the Electric Power Research Institute, researchers, commercial building owners, and members of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. Our observation is by making these connections, our program is also helping the technology and innovation ecosystem here in the Bay Area. That concludes my report. Thank you.
I'll just comment, I was not aware of that last facet of the program, of connecting to others, and I think that's great for the reasons you stated. Thanks.
Thank you for that report. Commissioner Melton.
Since the director mentioned the information in the quarterly report, I wanted to take this opportunity to congratulate staff. In my opinion, the quarterly report is becoming more informative every quarter as they change format and add information, and it's getting better all the time, and I hope it keeps going in the same direction.
That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, as there is no unfinished business, let's go to new business, and the first item is election of officers.
So I'll just comment that Chair Cook and I discussed this topic earlier today, and we agree that any member of this commission would be a fine vice chair or chair. If anyone would like to do so, they should. We also discussed that if no one else particularly wants to do so, that we would be happy to continue in the current roles or reversed roles or whatever. We discussed in that scenario that James said he'd be happy to carry on as chair for another year, and I'd be happy to do that. So we can do whatever folks would like to do. So that's my comment.
I'd like to nominate James Cook for chair.
What's the procedure?
Need a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay.
Can I second? I think I can second. Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion, questions?
Any other nominations?
Other nominations?
Yeah. In terms of the vice chair, I'd like to nominate Jonathan Foster.
Second.
Okay. Any comment or questions about either one of those?
Sure, I'll comment. I just wanted to comment that I think James and John have been doing a terrific job, and we're fortunate to have their services and their enthusiasm and their leadership.
Thanks very much. Okay, can we just vote for both at the same time? All in favor of the two nominations, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. Thank you very much. One more year. Look forward to it. Thanks. Okay.
Staff is thrilled.
Sure.
Have a chair and a vice
And what would
chair.
you have said if there was some other result?
Would have said, we're also thrilled to have a chair and a vice chair.
A future agenda will look at term limits. 4 more years.
Oh, thank you. Okay, item number 2, Development Center update.
I'd like to introduce Peter Pernajad he's the Development Center Director. A while back, we had promised to give an update on the Development Center. At the time, I think Peter had been relatively new, so we now think he's made a number of changes, and it's worth you being aware of them.
Sure.
All right, you tell me how much time, 25 minutes, or am I?
You've already taken about 10 of them, so keep
Okay.
going.
So Bovatai is an organizational development company that came in and helped us develop our organizational model. We've been working on branding. We've been working on investing in relationships, specifically myself and all the other key department heads. We take an interest in every division. Obviously, development services is a portion of a lot of departments. It's not their key role, so we have to make sure that we temper our needs against their day-to-day activities and work schedules. I mentioned, have the DCAG, we've got the Photovoltaic Action Committee, and we recently celebrated Building Safety Month. Another facet is our technology. Technology is a large part of how we deliver our service. We're trying to become more and more automated. We have a long-range technology vision plan. I'll be taking an update to the council, hopefully in the next few months. It started back in 2011, late 2011, early 2012, with a vision document that identified monies for the use of upgrading products, deploying new products, procuring the support necessary to develop the existing products. We're continuing that. So the architecture in which we deploy technology is in small contracts to ensure that we can make sure that we deliver on those contracts before we move on to another, as opposed to a large encompassing one. So we're fast-paced. We move from one contract to another very quickly. We initiated an open data program with the only data set on our open data site that has real-time data. And we're moving more and more towards that, providing real-time access to current plan check status, plan check conditions, corrections, as well as inspection statuses.
Do you have documents online for the public can they view if they're going through a project with you, can they see where they are in the process?
That's where we're headed.
Okay.
So the first part of that in a multi-phased approach was making sure that we were using the most up-to-date current version of the software so that we can layer some additional technologies. But that you're talking about is in phase 2, 3, and 4. And so I won't get into the details, but absolutely that's where we're headed. Okay, next slide. Some of the major accomplishments relative to technology, I'll just hit a couple of these. We have a 4-phased program. The first phase we completed, which was upgrading our version of our permit software. The second phase is our mobile technologies, where we're starting to status all inspections in the field. The third phase will be citizen access, where we start providing citizens real-time access and information to their plan check and inspection. And the fourth phase will be electronic plan review, so we can work towards eliminating physical plans that come to the development center. We're working on integration with GIS, integration with SAP, and other things along the way. So we've been pretty busy. One thing worth noting is because we have a data-rich environment, we create a lot of data. A lot of people are interested in that data. We've attracted a lot of developers that have come to the DC wanting to create applications for us. These partnerships are free to the city, and we leverage those opportunities to create added value in terms of applications and software that help homeowners, property owners, developers. The most recent one was one called Building Eye, which is available online. If you go to buildingeye.com, we had nothing to do with this venture, but a group came to us from Ireland and created an application that gives you the ability to see any building permit application or one that was issued in the city at any time. And that data is updated daily.
Those third parties you were just talking about, are they generally using only publicly available data, or are they also getting access as part of these relationships you described to data that isn't already publicly available?
Well, all of the data that we have at the development center is public, and it's all subject to public records request. So what we've done in the effort to be consistent with our open data initiative was to put that data on the internet to begin with. So for Building Eye, they access that data directly from our open data portal, but I ensured that the data that we put on the open data portal was data that is less controversial, so no addresses, no phone numbers, although that data is available if someone were to scour the permit itself. I chose not to put that on the open data side just to avoid any controversy.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I think that's an important point, that even when data is already publicly available, there are still privacy concerns in
Absolutely.
making it more readily
Exactly.
available.
Yeah, I'm sensitive to that.
And presumably when these third parties do this sort of thing with the data, the city at that point no longer has any responsibility for
That's
the
correct.
subsequent accuracy of the data.
That's correct.
Great, thanks a lot.
Yeah, sure. Next slide. We made some key staffing changes. If you've read the book, Good to Great, the idea of getting people on the bus, getting people in the right seats on the bus is something that I tend to develop my business plan on. So we made a lot of key staffing changes since I've been on the bus, and now the bus is running in a smoother direction. So now it's just a matter of delivering the bus to the right location. So we're driving. Well, sure. So Dion Early is representative from planning. She's our green building planner. She is working directly with the folks at PCNE on green building initiatives as they relate to planning entitlements. And we're working closely with her in terms of ensuring that our green building initiatives continue to evolve into the future as we look for ways to improve our ways to be sustainable. So next slide. A big part of City Manager Keene's efforts are performance measures. We created performance measures at our last budget cycle. The council asked that I create outcome-based instead of output-based performance measures, and so we did. We created 3 performance measures, and this is a critical point, that now measure how effective we are as a department, not as a building division. In the past, they were viewed as a division, the building division, and how effective they were able to process plans. The problem with that is that they're not the only person that is needed to issue a permit. Plans go through planning, utilities, public works, fire, and a variety of other divisions within those departments. So what we need to do is identify how effective we are in getting through that process without just looking at one piece of that pie. And so the new performance measures that are in the budget document now look at that entire spectrum of responsibility and hold the entire group accountable for any permit that gets stuck in any one step in that process. So it really puts our feet to the fire to ensure that we're improving the whole system, not just a piece. Some of the major accomplishments that we do in that effort is to put out a monthly newsletter, like I mentioned, quarterly goals. These things are identified by the unit managers that represent each of these units and move towards getting us more collaborative, working closer together to identify pieces along the way that we need to improve to ensure that we're able to streamline and expedite the review process. As an organization, it takes us about 30 days to review one cycle of plans. Our goal is to reduce that substantially, but it takes a group effort, and a lot of it has to do with staffing in different departments, so we can only go as fast as our slowest link. And that isn't a criticism as much as it's a reality of what we do. So I talked about PV. I know that's a large priority of your group, and so Utilities has been working closely with Development Services in streamlining our photovoltaic permitting process. We recently partnered with the Photovoltaic Action Committee, which was representatives from the entire spectrum of the PV installers. We had Solar City, Cobalt, you name it, we had them there, Horizon, a variety of other installers. We looked at ways that we could streamline and expedite our small residential PV permits, and we did that. And in that time, you can see that the total number of PV rebate reservations has gone up. This isn't entirely due to what we've done, obviously, but we want to steepen that curve and get more PVs in the city by opening up the process and making it as transparent and quick and easy as possible for as many installers to come into the city, and reverse the trend of people leaving Palo Alto or putting a premium on Palo Alto because the process is so difficult. The next slide shows you the number of days to get a permit. You can see the trend is moving in a positive direction. The last 2 permits were issued over the counter. That's where we want to try to head. So in the last 30 days, you can see that we're getting better and better at this. We're doing electronic PV review. When people submit an electronic version, we can do it right then and there on our computer. This is looking at the number of days to get to a final inspection. Again, looking at this is over the course of about a year. You can see that the trend is how many each one of those is cycle times and days of how many inspections it takes to get to a final. The takeaway from this is that we're getting permits finaled faster from the time that they're issued to the time that they're finaled. We recently were awarded the best of a range from worst to best from a third-party rating system called Project Permit. They're under a group called Vote Solar. They're a nationwide organization that look at all the jurisdictions across the nation and identify key best management practices that are in place that would identify whether they're PV friendly or not. We reduced our fees, we expedited our process, we put all of our documents online, we created a one-stop shop, we created a system of issuing permits over the counter. All these steps that we created as an effort of the PVAC brought us to this place. So I can proudly say that we've actually made a change. I've got the data to support that it's trending in the right direction. We still have a ways to go. We're collecting the PVAC again next week to do a health check, and I've sent out a survey to see if their experience is the same as my metrics. And just as an organization, just to reiterate,
I have a question.
yes.
Given your success, have you been helping any other cities? It seems like there are some cities on that list that aren't doing as well as you've done.
That's funny you mentioned that. I was contacted by Green World conferences and Solar Tech because they had heard of some of the things that we did, and they want us to speak at their conference, to speak to other installers, other cities about how to institute some of these changes. So yeah, that's our plan.
Question, have we done the same thing around EV charging?
That would be our next step.
So that's our next initiative?
Yeah. So as part of the DCAG and the priorities that they initiate, we roll through these. I want to be part and parcel to all of these, and so we can only go at a rate fast enough that I can handle. So it's been pretty busy. But so again, just development services is a part, and I understand, of everybody's total plate. And so we aren't a department in and of itself that has its own accountability and subject to one department head. Our structure is that I have fingers in a lot of departments, and so it's key and critical that I maintain relationships in all those departments, because their success is my success and vice versa. So this kind of just illustrates that this is a close linked network of departments that work collaboratively across the organization to achieve results, and not just the efforts of one person or one department. So that's my presentation in a nutshell. Any questions?
Peter, thank you for your presentation. I have certainly heard over the years a lot of complaints about the PV permitting process in Palo Alto, both from residents, but more from installers. But I've never really known if those complaints were valid. In other words, is Palo Alto making life unnecessarily difficult, or do other communities just are too lax? And I don't know, and it doesn't really matter. You've revamped it, and that's all good. I do think, though, that because apparently many installers do have a negative view of Palo Alto, and I've even heard from some that won't do business here, it would seem to make sense to make sure we publicize, or you publicize, or the city publicizes this new process. Has a press release gone out about it?
Yes.
It has, okay.
So a press release has gone out, and we've also reached out to all the different installers, notifying them directly, sent them surveys, etc. Part of this exercise is making sure that, for example, Cobalt was just awarded last week a contract for $1 million to install a 450 kV system on the top of the JCC. That press release is going to go out. It's going to include utilities and development services as a way to say, hey, things are changing. They wouldn't rely on us with huge damages at the end of the year if they're not able to install this thing unless they trusted our process.
Right.
I just got a call yesterday that HP is considering doing even a larger project on their headquarters building.
Okay, and then in terms of that, you said the fee has gone down, or fees have gone down. Can you provide sort of an example of, are the fees varied depending on the size of the project and so on and so forth, or?
The fees that I was referring to are residential, small
Right.
residential fees.
What-
There's a base fee.
And how has that gone down? Can
It's
you-
gone down, basically it's a flat $400 now.
And what
before
did
it
what it
was-
used to be?
It was a fraction higher, but the reason we lowered it is to make sure that we were under that threshold that these private research groups have identified as the break-even point for cities.
And just for the sake of argument, why charge any fee for someone putting in?
That's a good
PV?
point. That's a political decision that needs to be made by the council. If they want to subsidize PV installations, I'd be happy to do that. I think it's, that we're just trying to.
Does the city believe that the $400 cost is approximately equals the cost of handling the permitting? Or,
Well, thanks to our improved process and reduced processing time, now it equates more. It's definitely, I wouldn't say it's 1-for-1, but it's very close.
would you say it's higher or lower than the actual cost?
I would say that it's probably a bit higher, but not enough to
Okay. then-
warrant any.
And then my last question, then I'll stop asking questions. The time to get a permit has gone down?
Correct.
And again, what would your metrics be on that?
Okay, so the time to get a permit typically would be in the hundreds of days. Now it's gone down to approximately 50
For a residential?
for a residential.
It's, okay.
So that typically involves a plan check. And what we're doing is reducing the cycle times between plan checks. The important thing to consider is what we can do in the process. We can expedite our review time. We can't expedite their turnaround time.
Right,
So the vast majority of time it takes to get the permit is on their end.
I see.
So what we're trying to do to accommodate that is not reduce, because our turnaround times are 3 days
Okay,
to get a PV turnaround, which is normally 30 days.
got it.
So the one thing that we are working on is reduce the cycle times. So maybe get the permit issued after the first or second plan check as opposed to the third.
Got it. Okay, thanks very much.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for making the presentation.
Thank you for your
Peter.
time.
Thanks for the
You
work
have
you're
a
doing.
pleasant evening.
Raise a question for the good director on this point. Director Fong, if the Utilities Advisory Commission wanted to recommend to the city council a second look at that permitting fee for PV, is there any particular reason we can't do so? How would we go about doing that? Agendize it for a future meeting and discuss whether the fee should either be lower or zero?
I actually don't know the answer. In utilities, we don't do the fees. It's typically a planning development center function. It almost has to be a recommendation, I think, perhaps to the planning commission? I don't know. Sorry, I don't know because we actually don't.
Okay, we'll circle back to it when we do topics for future meetings. Okay, thanks.
So once again, it's not in the purview of utilities.
All right. Item number 3, overview of safety-related outreach.
Well, you may or may not have the groovy color version up on the screen, but you have the less exciting black and white in front of you. So I'll just try to have colorful narration to make up for that. Although it looks like there may be hope, but I'll kind of get started and then we can catch up with me. Basically, as you're probably aware, we have truckloads of outreach information on all kinds of subjects about our programs and everything. But today we thought we'd do a presentation just to focus you on what it is we're doing in the area of safety in utilities. And this presentation is just a snapshot of the materials we have. It's not all of them, but it just gives you that sense of what topics we're trying to address and how we're doing it. And this presentation focuses on the print media, so we're sending these same kind of messages through social media and videos, having events, community events, things like that. So saying, it's getting close. In terms of general safety tips, one of the things we did is create these safety tip notepads, which I think we distributed, so you guys have seen them. They've turned out to be quite popular as giveaways at various events and things that we do. And the nice part about it is that this collection of safety tips, which covers water, gas, electricity, and sewer, by being on a notepad, it sits in front of people for a long time, whether it's on their desk or by the phone at home. We find that it's a good way to just kind of get reminded, have these things sink in. Then going to more specific safety materials, starting with gas safety. This is the first, but not the last, of the bad puns that permeate this presentation. I was planning to do this presentation anyway, and in the middle of that preparation, we got the news that we won an award from the American Public Gas Association for excellence in consumer outreach in the area of natural gas safety, which was really nice. In fact, things took place this week, and my associate Kristen Creed is in Boston. She was collecting. Oh, we're getting there. There she is. She texted me this photo from yesterday, which is she had just received the award on our behalf. So it was just a very nice, after doing the work and making the effort to try to have an effective safety program, to get that feedback that, of the public utilities in the country, they felt that our program had been the best. So next. We have to send out, we're mandated to send out, we would want to do it anyway, but we're mandated to send out general gas safety information once a year, where we kind of have to comprehensively cover all the topics related to gas safety. The result is a brochure that is very loaded with information. We hope to put it together in a way that people will think of it as something to stick near their phone books and other things like that and keep. But we know that it's not the most thrilling thing in the world, so this year we tried to liven it up a little bit with the pirate theme. And so we added a pirate to the collection of people interested, because certainly when you would go to bury treasure, you could be in danger of hitting pipes and wires. And in fact, there is a wonderful children's DVD video that we have and use in our youth outreach efforts that features a pirate, but it's all about calling 811 before you dig, and it kind of shows the misadventures of a pirate who fails to do that, and the children who show him what and why, and it teaches about all the underground utilities in the process. And okay, these scratch and sniff tags that we created are also extremely useful, more than I realized they would be. A large percentage of people feel they don't know what gas will smell like, and you describe it as a skunk or whatever, but there's nothing like having this tag and scratching it and, okay, now I get it. So we use them a lot, both in youth programs and a lot of emergency preparation events that we go to. Makes people much more comfortable if they feel like they do know what its gas is going to smell like. This is just one example of where we tried to tie the perhaps less thrilling subject of safety to a theme or a holiday to get people's attention. However, we needed to be more careful, I think, in on this particular one. Here we have this whole Valentine's theme, but that largest central heart has the message, smell gas, act fast. I don't think this was the... Anyway, enough said on that. Again, back to that theme of calling before you dig. there is a pipeline hit every 3 minutes in the United States, 24/7. I thought that was an incredible statistic, and it just underlines how significant a problem it is of people failing to realize that there are pipelines under where they're excavating. So we've done quite a few bill inserts to both our residential and commercial customers, and we were featuring one of our employees, Philly Castro, in this one, a guy who deals with and works with the pipelines all the time to try to get people focused on all the times when they might be digging and might be hitting something. This was another case of where I did not realize originally how huge of a problem it is of people not considering their meters something that need to be accessible. And I didn't realize how big of a problem it was until some of our field people started sending me photos to make their point. Because they kept saying, would you put stuff out about this? And it's like, whatever. It's not, a couple of people. It's dozens and even hundreds of people, residential and commercial. And it not only makes it very difficult to read a meter under these kinds of circumstances that are pictured, but it's actually quite a hazard because firefighters, for example, won't go into a building that's on fire until the gas has been turned off. And there's been situations where they're hunting, where is the gas meter. On the picture with the bushes, the only reason you can probably even vaguely guess where the meter might be is you see a slightly darkened spot. It's where the meter reader dug into the bush so that he could look through and get it. So we needed to address that. The way we did it is meter reader Joe Martin posed for us, and with the What's Wrong with This Picture campaign, we did bill inserts and ad inserts in the Palo Alto Weekly, trying to focus people on, go outside, find your gas meter, and if you can't, or if it's very difficult to, then do something about it. The fixes are always quite easy. In some cases, as you saw, as simple as moving your bike to a different location. We have been running crossword puzzles as a bill insert, and have actually gotten quite a lot of positive feedback from people that they really enjoy doing them, sometimes with their whole family. But we've used that as another venue to get our safety messages across. And as an example, I gave their clue 11 about never use one of these during a gas leak. The answer is light a match, or the word match was the answer. The point I'd like to make is that there is nothing that is too obvious or too basic that it's not worth mentioning a lot of times. Who would light a match to find a gas leak in their house? Me. Prior to my being wizened by my experience here in the utilities department, it seemed like a reasonable thing to do. People do not focus on the fact that gas is completely invisible, so you can be totally surrounded by it and not realize that at all. But it's just an example of one of the safety messages that we can't say too often. Another area that we have been focusing on is, of course, the cross-border issue. Palo Alto, as you're aware, several years ago, definitely was a leader in the country in terms of facing the issue of the existence of cross-bores and trying to do something about it. When we launched our program, we're starting to get calls and inquiries from other utilities that are realizing they're going to have to do something also. But from a communications point of view, I want to go back in this one case to 2011, when we first launched communicating about this program with a brochure where we wanted to send the message that this is an important issue, but that people don't need to be panicking about it. So we went with this, the brochure that had lots of calm, detailed explanation of exactly what a cross-bore is and what we were doing to make sure that none of them existed in Palo Alto. And we found about a year later that people, if they did pay attention in the first place, they were certainly forgetting, and we were getting a lot of inquiries. What are those Hydromax trucks doing around, and what's going on with that? So we realized we needed to do another major campaign, so we did featuring the postcard that's up here. Also, this was about the same time we had the Youth Video Corps create another video for us that we put out there. And on the second side of this postcard, which is the next slide, you'll see that again, though, we're still the calm, detailed explanation. Well, what we came to realize more recently is that in being so calm and detailed, we weren't getting across clearly what was probably the key message was that until and unless there was verification that no possible cross-bore existed for someone, they needed to call us first before they had their sewer cleared. That the big danger of cross-bores really only manifests itself when somebody goes to clear their sewer if there is a gas line cross-bored through it and their sewer clearing equipment hits that line, breaking it, and gas starts leaking out. So they need to call us first before they clear their sewer line. And so this year we went with a campaign that didn't go into a lot of detail. We gave them the website where all that detail resided, but the campaign pieces themselves have been focusing just on the big message, call us first. And then, showing, as I said earlier, there's no pun so low that I won't use it. We, in terms of getting out information about being safe around electricity, particularly during storms or situations where wires were down, we first ran in Palo Alto weekly insert card that, using our electric crew as the guys that actually go out and deal with electrical emergencies, it's like, hey, there they are, and advertising that we had this magnet available that had emergency information on it. That was extremely successful. We got hundreds and hundreds of requests for those magnets, so we went ahead and used that same theme in the bill inserts. But when we ran the bill insert on the back, we included a very detailed list of emergency preparation, storm preparation, and electric safety tips. Also, in terms of safety, of course, is the issue of tree branches and power lines, and a lot of our outages, especially during bad weather, are caused because of tree branches falling on the lines. So we've been trying to push our Right Tree in the Right Place program and get people's attention to the fact that we will help, we will take care of their tree in terms of removing the one that's a problem at no cost to them, and giving them a rebate to get another tree, either one that doesn't grow so tall to replace the one that's been taken out, or to put a different kind of tree, to put any kind of tree, but in a different location. So that's a safety program that's it's been around for years, but it was kind of fairly low profile, and we've been trying to up its profile with some of this promotion. Then sewer safety. The big issue with sewer lines is that, unlike all the other pipelines, our customers own the sewer lines between the city's main and their meter. Which means they're responsible for them. They are responsible for the maintenance of those lines. And because of that, because that's the case, and many people don't know it, and even people who do know it don't really care that much, the lines are not maintained well often, and that leads to some big problems. As these pictures give an idea, again, this is like with the meter situation. There's a lot more of these ugly sewer situations than we'd like to think. What is not pictured is the other kinds of things that we find in sewers, because we just didn't have photographs of them that I could find readily. But there's a lot of diapers, rags, and my favorite, because it so boggles my mind, which is cement. Apparently that when people are doing projects and their cement is in liquid form and they pour it down toilets, which seems to be the main place they pour it down to get rid of it during interior remodeling particularly, it doesn't seem to occur to them that as that cement hardens somewhere in the sewer line, it's going to cause a blockage problem. So that has led to a variety of outreach pieces that we have done, but once again, we recruited Philly Castro in our bill inserts to talk about what's going on down there and try to get people to stop putting these things into their sewers. One fun aside about Philly is that when people do have a sewer overflow and call the city, he's one of the main ones that goes out there. And so he's gotten a lot of like celebrity status and people reacting like, oh, you're the guy from the postcard, you're the guy from the bill insert, that they're getting served by him. So, and just proving that our campaign that features our employees in a lot of different ads, those really are our employees really doing the work that they're talking about, which is kind of nice for people to realize that. So the last area that I wanted to touch on in terms of specific utilities is water, and there the safety issue is just the quality of the water that people are drinking. And once again, we have, as all water utilities do, federal requirements that certain information is sent out every year. And what was required before was that it was mailed out to every customer. And we got involved in a federal process where we could suggest changes, and Palo Alto led the charge to have one of those changes be the option of people getting it in a digital format. And we were able to be successful, which was great because we took our basic water quality brochure, but we no longer had to print 32,000 copies of it and pay the postage cost of mailing them to each person. Instead, we sent out a much less expensive and frankly, I think a much more attention-getting postcard that told people that this report was available online, or that it could be emailed to them, or they could have the hard copy mailed if they wanted. So far, we have only gotten, I think, about 30 requests for the hard copy to be mailed. We still printed a couple thousand of the brochures just so that we would have them for various events we go to. Also, we send all customers when they come to Palo Alto, a new customer welcome packet, and it includes information like the water quality brochure for people when they're just starting out to understand what that is, so they'll know in future years whether they want to request it or not. I also added on here about our backflow prevention program because that is another case of a safety issue, not having yucky bad water flow back into the city system. It is primarily impacts our commercial customers that have processes where this would even be possible. It does affect some residents, particularly if they have wells or gray water recycling systems. In all these cases, the educational component is that people have to realize if you have these situations, you need to have a device that prevents the bad water from getting into the city's good water. So one of the things that has come up, though, however, is even though this mostly impacts our commercial customers, the state law requires every water utility to survey every single customer to find out whether they have certain features or equipment on their property that would make them candidates for requiring a backflow prevention device. That's everybody. Now, this is no water utility that I know of has done this completely yet. That's a lot of people to get this information from. So we wanted to figure out, well, how are we going to go about doing this? And we did a pilot test in the Barron Park area of sending out an online survey. And this up there, we have Nico Prokos from one of our water resource planners. We used his mug to, and in a series of reminder cards, things like that, we actually were able to get a really high participation rate. I think we got back over 95% of the surveys of the area by a combination of sending out, the initial request and then a reminder card and door hangers and things. And we're taking the lessons we've learned from that to figure out how we're going to roll this out to the rest of the city and eventually meet that requirement to have every single customer have identified what they got. The final topic that I wanted to mention this evening was just in terms of emergency preparedness. We have gotten involved with the neighborhood groups, especially for the various emergency preparation events. And for that purpose, we did develop this outreach piece, which is a lot of emergency tips, including how to turn off your meter. And we do not give this brochure out just generally like at public events. We do it specifically for people who have seen a talk about how you turn off your meters and when you turn off your meters, because basically we do not want people to do this themselves, except in an emergency situation. They often can cause more problems by trying to turn off their meter than they're solving, but obviously in an emergency, it's something that it would be good for people to know how to do. So as my last slide there says, that my work here tonight is done, but our work on safety education will never be done. Thank you. Oh, is there any questions?
So first of all, congratulations on the gas award.
Yes, thank you.
So as I look at this material, we're clearly at the top of our class in what we present. But to me, it all looks very old school, looks, sort of thing that I wonder what percentage of these mailings, end up to go direct to recycling. I just wonder, are we thinking about more digital, overall, just a more digital strategy, more search-oriented? If I had a problem, I would probably go to a browser and type in, Palo utility emergency number. I don't even keep phone books in my house anymore. So just how do we deal with this issue of relevance and of presenting in a way that people can find us in the modern world?
Well, I think that's a very good point, and one we're certainly, looking at whenever we're doing anything. We think about what are the different ways to get this out that will still create the bill insert, for example, but at the same time look at where can we use social media to get out that same event information, for example.
I just wanted to point out, to Debbie's credit, we've actually done a multi-pronged communication approach. So we do use Twitter, we use Facebook, we use the website, we keep it just like rapidly updated with our information. I get the emails. Okay, it's posted. We know instantly the things that we need to have posted have been posted. So we are attempting to move to the digital age. Some of these, you're right, they probably, for some folks, just go straight into the recycling bin, but I know none of you would do that. You would all look at it, and so you're clearly part of our audience here. On the other hand, we are very aware that we serve a pretty diverse population here in terms of folks who are very computer savvy and folks who may not be.
One thing that happens every year, and is I think Val mentioned earlier in the remarks, is about to happen again, is this gas safety awareness survey where people just get asked what they're aware of, which we get high enough marks on, if you will, high enough percentages, typically in the 80s or above, that tell us that the message does seem to be getting out to a spectrum of people. But in the area particularly of bill inserts, my estimation based on what surveys we've done and what I've seen is that somewhere around half the population glances at them. And that half includes a lot of people who, as Val was mentioning, don't use their computers as much, and that's where they get their information. And then there's, of course, a huge number of people, the other half, that don't. So we've got to keep the old school stuff going, but we definitely need to get new school, which is why it's great to have people on our staff like Kristen, who you saw in that getting the award, because she's much more on the cutting edge. She comes to me regularly with oh, Twitter is so last century. Here's what everybody's doing now, and we are trying to stay current with that and put our messages out over these newer social media methods.
If I could just make one other comment. If you ever look at blogs, you'll probably see Debbie on there every once in a while.
Oh yeah, I do go online and make my comments when I don't like what I see or I think there's something that's incorrect being put out there.
So I'm probably going to show my incompetence by asking this question, but I'm a user of the e-billing system, so I don't get a paper bill anymore, so I don't get inserts anymore. And if there is a link on my e-bill to the inserts, I haven't found it.
Yes, there is. And your comment makes me think that I will go look at what they send and see why it is not prominent enough that you don't realize it's there, because it absolutely, there's a link to see the current bill inserts. Now, I don't kid myself about how many people, even with that link, are going to take the time and go and click on it and look through all the bill inserts electronically. Again, that's part of why we have to use a multi-pronged strategy. But it absolutely shouldn't be hard to find. So I will get right on figuring out why it was hard to find and what we could do about that.
Great, thanks so much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Okay, item number 4, staff recommendation that the Utilities Advisory Commission recommend that the City Council terminate or approve changes to the Palo Alto Green Program.
So I guess this will be the short item, and we have Senior Resource Planner Monica Padilla here.
Sorry. Before Monica starts, or while she's setting up, we have 2 speaker cards. So I'd like to invite Bruce Hodge up and then Walt Hayes, please. Thanks, Bruce. Walt Hayes, please. Thanks very much. Okay, now you're on, Monica.
Sorry. Oh, no, I am. Sorry. So I guess I was voted to represent a team called the Palo Green Redesign Team, which consisted of Jane Ratchie and of Thomas Zen, who's in the audience, Kevin Carley, who's also here, and Anthony Inario, who's also here. So I'm just here to bring the message from the team. Sort of. Okay, so you can switch. How about page down? There you go. Whoops. Okay, so tonight we have kind of a menu of options for you to choose from. Our basic recommendation is that we do something with Palo Alto Green, and so the options in front of you are either to terminate Palo Alto Green. We can terminate the full needs part of the program, and the full needs part is where you pay a rate premium and get 100% of your supply from renewables, but maintain the commercial component of the Palo Alto Green program, which allows them to buy blocks of renewable energy. Or approve changes to Palo Alto Green for the two parts of the rate structure to allow for customers to get 100% of their needs from renewables and or purchase RECs if they want to. And then last, we're also asking if you would direct us to develop a Palo Alto Green gas program to be implemented by July 2014. So that's the basic recommendation, and we'll walk through how we got there. So as you know, this the concept of redesigning Palo Alto Green has been kind of on our to-do list for quite some time. It started really when we started to bring in renewables into the portfolio as part of the renewable portfolio standard for the city and for the state. But actively, we began to look at it in as early as March 2012 when council approved the long-term electric acquisition plan and directed us to look at it specifically and to redesign it. Further, in March 2003, council approved the carbon neutral plan and essentially making our base supply for Palo Alto customers be carbon neutral, have no greenhouse gas emissions. And that basically also kind of eliminated the need to have Palo Alto Green as it exists right now. So right before that, we came to the UAC with a bunch of different alternatives of what we could do with Palo Alto Green and sought some feedback. And then we also went to council in February at a study session and also got feedback on how to redesign the program. Further, we went to the community and sought their feedback, and we had tons of ideas, which ultimately resulted in a recommendation that came to the UAC in April of 2013. And in that recommendation, in that meeting, you actually made a motion that directed us to do essentially to revise the program so that it would be a community solar type program and to develop a natural gas green program. But you also directed us to come back with more details. So we went back to the drawing board after that meeting, and we developed a UAC subcommittee which had representation from Commissioner Chang and Commissioner Eglash, and we kind of sought out to talk about what do we want to do and why are we doing this. So we identified some objectives and then looked at some new alternatives and ultimately came to the recommendation that we have tonight, or part, and then it got modified again. So next slide. So again, some of the key drivers, I don't want to repeat, this is, just the carbon neutral portfolio and our increasing amount of renewables in our supply portfolio. And then last, I guess it's a good thing, but REC costs have come down significantly. And as you're aware, the rate for Palo Alto Green was a fixed rate established back when the program first was developed in 2003 and hadn't really changed because it essentially was set to cover costs, both admin costs, marketing costs, staff costs, and the cost of RECs. And the next slide shows you So the top line, the dark green line, shows program costs. The other one, the red line shows program revenues. The red line shows program costs, and then the bottom green line shows cumulative net revenue. So starting at about 2010, like I said before, the cost came down quite a bit. Even though we revamped the program in 2013 to purchase premium RECs from solar located in California, the costs were still significantly lower than the revenue. And as a result, we've ended up with a surplus net revenue associated with the program. So that's one of the driving forces for having to change it as well. So as part of the discussions that we had in the UAC subcommittee and the green redesign team, we, like I mentioned before, developed some objectives. And even though we had these in the back of our head when we were looking at other alternatives, we put them right in front this time around. And essentially, we said that the program has to have direct participant value. So whoever's participating and agreeing to pay additional needs to receive something in return. And that the program should have or must have environmental benefits that go above and beyond what they would get by just participating in our regular rates. It has to be easy to implement with current resources, both from a billing standpoint and staff resources. And program costs need to be able to be recovered easily and not subsidized by non-participants, which to date hasn't been an issue. In the early 8 years of the program, it was somewhat subsidized, but it's not anymore. The program must be marketable and transparent. We need to be able to keep up participation levels. It should be available to all customers. And because of this issue of this direction to have to redesign it, it needs to be implemented soon, and as soon as possible. Certainly.
I believe when you say it needs to be available to all customers, you didn't mean to suggest that every program needs to offer benefit to every ratepayer. I believe that you were happy to consider programs that might in fact be of interest and useful to only some ratepayers. Is that correct? My point being, I think the city has considered and continues to consider an array of programs, some of which might be of interest to and give benefit to only a fraction of city residents.
To the extent these are all voluntary programs, that's the case. So people who would volunteer to participate in the program, but perhaps not receive any direct benefit, that would be their choice.
Yeah, I think I'm making a different point. We wanted to avoid a sort of, and I think the city wanted to avoid a sort of dumbing down, lowest common denominator approach to this project that looked only at programs that would potentially be of interest to everyone in the city. And so I think the staff, and staff will correct me if I'm wrong, was happy to consider programs that might be part of a portfolio approach where certain programs, for example, might be particularly beneficial to people that have residential rooftops that aren't amenable to solar, or people that live in apartments and condominiums where they don't have access to their own roof, whereas there might be other programs that are going to be of interest to people that do have the ability to put photovoltaic panels on their own roof. You want to comment?
I think what we meant by available to all customers is that it would be a program that's available for all residential customers, all commercial customers. I think that's all that we meant by that.
Yeah, I agree. Right. We didn't want something that's exclusive or restricted in any sense. And I guess I'm just trying to make a point above and beyond that in general, this might not be a case where we should look only at one-size-fits-all programs. There might be programs where one size doesn't fit all.
Is this a good place to raise some questions about objectives and criteria, or shall we hold that?
I'm okay with doing that.
Yeah, I just want to point out that the first principle, the direct participant value principle, is a little tenuous because a REC doesn't really provide any benefit directly to the purchaser of the REC. What the REC is doing is somebody is buying something really for the benefit of others, of the planet. So I think that as a starting point, this notion that with the existing program, people are buying something to their own benefit is a little misplaced. So, you know, when I look at the comments in your table, I question the analysis on some of these.
I think we kind of expanded that definition of direct benefit to not necessarily have to mean that they're going to get a direct tangible benefit, but it could be a feel-good benefit. And that was one of the things, like when we were looking at the community solar, for instance, they would be recipients of any of the output from that solar, but yet they would feel good because they helped some other organization, be it a nonprofit or something, receive benefits. So it was more of an intangible benefit, but that they could be able to somehow trace that they contributed and that they got this benefit out of it. But you're right, it's a little less clear. It's an indirect
We'll
benefit.
take a look at our wording.
Yeah.
We understand.
Yeah. Are there any other questions related? No. So on program alternatives in this go-around, we looked at, first of all, the option of just eliminating the program. And eliminating it since the underlying portfolio is carbon neutral, and in a sense it's redundant to have this program. And then we could essentially devote staff resources and other resources to develop other programs. Again, we looked at modifications to Palo Alto Green. The main one was to recognize renewable resources in the standard portfolio and to enable us to offer to our customers 100% eligible renewable portfolio. So one where we would basically green up the hydro portion of their portfolio. We also looked at reducing prices to align with costs and revenues. And then we considered other options that had been brought forth to the UAC in previous meetings, including the idea of community solar program options, the Palo Alto Green Gas Program, fuel switching program, and electric vehicle incentives. And this is where we're collecting funds to basically promote these measures, maybe at the participants, for participant use or for somebody else's use. So specifically looking at the option of eliminating the Palo Alto Green Program, there's a lot of, I guess, emotion tied to Palo Alto Green and the brand that it creates and the image that it creates for the city and its participants and all of the awards and recognitions. And that's hard to put a kind of a price tag on, but it certainly is of value. And so we didn't want to just eliminate the program for the sake of eliminating it. And we looked at some of the pros and cons. And one of the big pros is that it would allow us to end the program on a high note. So participation levels are high. The program still has credibility and it's recognized as an award-winning program. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it would be great to just call it a victory and move on. And then we could redirect resources to other worthwhile projects. And this also gets rid of the problem that we have that we're greening up what's already green in the portfolio when we green up 100% of our portfolio right now. The big cons are that we may lose the Palo Alto Green brand and national recognition. And more importantly, it eliminates an option to our ratepayers that they seem to want, and this is the ability to have a superior product to our base product, and they voluntarily choose to pay this and have chosen to pay this. And for some of our larger commercial customers, this is a really important option. It helps them achieve their own sustainability objectives, whether it's to meet EPA, Green Power Partnership programs, or other certification requirements. So it has value to our customers right now. So just a brief description of the two options that we're recommending under one of the recommended options that you get to choose from. The Palo Alto Full Needs Program essentially is like what we have right now. The customer will see a rate premium on their bill of 0.2 cents per kilowatt hour. The big difference between what they get now and what they get under this revised program is that we're only going to be buying renewable energy certificates for that portion of their supply that is made up from hydroelectric resources. So we buy essentially half of the RECs than we had been buying, so the cost of the program is cheaper. But they'll be able to claim 100% eligible renewable. So on their power content label, it'll say they are 100% eligible renewable. The program would be available to all customers. And the next table just shows you kind of a breakdown on what the bill impact would be for the typical residential customer who uses about 407 kilowatt hours per month. Currently, under the current rate structure of Palo Alto Green, where they pay 1.5 cents premium, they would pay about $6.10 per month. Under the new program, they'd be paying 81 cents a month. So quite a significant decrease in costs. The Palo Alto Green Renewable Block Program is essentially identical to what we offer right now to our larger commercial customers. The main difference being the price of RECs have come down, and therefore the cost of the program would also come down. So rather than paying $15 or 2 cents or 0.2 cents per kilowatt hour, they would be paying, rather than paying $1.5 cents per block of renewable, they'd be paying 0.2 cents. I said that right. And then we would purchase RECs that are EPA certified or meet the EPA program requirements. So the big impact, obviously, of this program is going to be on the revenue side of the program. Under the current program, with the rate of 1.5 cent premium, the expected revenues are slightly a little bit higher than $1 million a year. Under the revised program, that'll go down significantly to $140,000 a year. And then you can see all the other costs associated with the program. We anticipate the vendor / admin marketing third-party supplier that we hired to administer this program costs would come down. The REC purchase cost is going to come down as well. Staff, we anticipate spending less time on this program in the future than we have in the past. So net revenue under the proposed modification to the program would actually be negative $210,000, and that would take care of some of the excess revenue we have. So again, one of the big items that we have heard over and over from the community, our customers in UAC and council, is the need to expand our solar options to the community. And we just heard it from Mr. Hodge and Mr. Hayes, the same issue that we need to expand, and they would support us promoting more solar, local solar. And we agree as staff, but we felt that the Palo Alto Green program, as it's designed, and the rate structure that we have, doesn't really enable that kind of a transition to that type of program, because many of those programs require either investments up front or longer-term commitments than Palo Alto Green rate structure is set up to do, which is basically you sign up whenever you want and you can drop whenever you want. There is no commitment. So what we have agreed to do, or what we will do, is we'll look at the whole local solar issue, and we promise to come back to the UAC at the end of the year with the plan on how to expand local solar in Palo Alto and meet all of our different market segment needs. Last, we're recommending that we pursue developing a green gas program. And when we came to the UAC back in April, we introduced this concept with the idea of either investing in a biogas facility or buying environmental offsets to reduce the carbon associated with natural gas. Since then, we've learned that the option of actually investing in biogas is quite expensive, and that we could actually do it with environmental offsets, and we can do it cheap enough so that a participant can reduce all of their carbon associated with their natural gas use if we did it with offsets. But there's a lot that we don't know about the environmental offset market, and so we want to take some time to actually think this program through and come back to you and establish the necessary enabling agreements and systems and changes to our billing system in order to allow for it. But we think we can do it faster than we had said before. I think before we had said that we would have it on the books by January 2015, and I think we can do it by July 2014. And maybe at some point, the other Palo Alto Green program, if it does get revised, will kind of transition into this program, but we hope to have it up and running quicker. So in summary, staff's recommendation is that you select from one of these options or direct us some way or another.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's go ahead and go with comments. Do you want to start, Commissioner Melton? Do you want to have any?
Sure, I'll start. I guess my first reaction is that, well, and to put it in terms of the staff recommendation, I think option 1B makes, is the better of the three alternatives under one. I'm particular taken that it doesn't seem to me to offer any advantage to the planet or anyone else for us to buy RECs to green up hydropower. That just, I mean, it's already green. If we are 100% green at this point, I don't see why we need to, and I didn't say 100% in compliance with state's definition of green, but in a real world definition of green. So I just don't see any advantage to buying RECs to green up hydropower. I do understand that there is an advantage to our commercial customers for their own purposes, and I think we should keep that part of the Palo Alto green program going, but I do not see it. I do not see any advantage to the full needs portion of the program. I would like to, in the one time before, moving on to the Palo Alto Green Gas program, I was the one dissenter the last time we voted on that program, and I guess I'm kind of coming around, but I would like to ask, you know, RECs took a long time to figure out what the heck they really were. What the heck are environmental offsets? What's the market for them? What do they do? How do we know they're really doing anything to benefit, you know, that is a real benefit in this world? So give me and any of the rest of you who are interested a quick tutorial on environmental offsets and the market for environmental offsets.
Well, it's gonna have to be a pretty high-level tutorial. Obviously, we need to come back with that to the UAC, because at this point, we don't have a green gas program designed. But environmental offsets are essentially some project that does reduce greenhouse gases, and there's many groups who certify these types of projects. And you know, there's different protocols for the different types. There's you know, ones related to forestry, municipal garbage, there's tree planting, there's a lot of different ones, and there's probably the highest level of certification are those environmental offsets that are certified by the California Air Resources Board for use in the cap and trade program. They have the highest standards. They accept the fewest protocols. So that is what we're thinking right at this point, would be the ones that we would actually recommend for the green gas program. And the numbers that are in there for the costs of environmental offsets in the sort of preliminary analysis included in the report assumes that the costs of those types of offsets. And so we'll have to return with a little bit better, more in-depth description of what environmental offsets are. And you may get a better answer to your question from one of your fellow commissioners.
But we still believe, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but the market for real biogas is still not developed enough. It's still horribly expensive, and we're not looking at that as a near-term solution?
Well, what we've seen is it's very difficult to find. It's very expensive. The amount of the biogas that is available is used generally where that biogas is produced, and it's used by in an electrical generator, and then that energy is claimed for someone's renewable portfolio standard on the electric side. Generally, this gas is not of a quality that can legally or practically be cleaned up and put into become pipeline quality and be put into the gas distribution system in the state. There are ways that some people are trying to do this, and generally it's getting landfill gas from Texas and somehow putting it in Texas and claiming it in California. And that just doesn't feel quite right to us. Although it has been done, I think SMUD did exactly that. And they're using it, again, for their renewable portfolio standard. But that to me is also very difficult to explain. And you know, California can't stop that gas from getting in, but I doubt those molecules ever get to California. But there is a worry that there's a state law that PG&E sponsored that's been on the books for many years that doesn't allow this type of gas to be put into the pipeline system. And this is because, particularly from landfills, the gas has so many other contaminants in it, heavy metals perhaps, that it will wreck up an electric generation plant. This isn't as big of a problem with something like a dairy where all the biomethane is from a very common and consistent source. So there's talk of potentially allowing that kind of thing to happen, but generally that gas now is used on site in generation, also electrical generation. So we're just not finding the availability of it, and the price is just very, very high, much higher than the environmental offsets have proved to be.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions I had. As I said, in my mind, I think that 1B is the better alternative of the three that have been put forth for item 1, and I do think that we should do something on. I think we can make a difference in the world of green gas, and I would support that if the environmental offset protocol turns out to be strong enough.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Melton. Now, Commissioner Walfogel.
Turn that on. Thank you. I largely agree with Commissioner Melton's comments with just slight nuance, which is I think there's really 3 components to the Palo Alto Green. One is a program, one is a brand, and the third piece is arguably a movement. And I agree with Commissioner Melton that the program piece, the full needs program piece of this that we've done in the past is now obsolete. We should throw a party. We should declare victory. Debbie's done a great job of getting the word out, and this is a spectacular accomplishment. But at the same time, we should figure out a way to retain this customer base that we have that are inside the program. Perhaps we suspend the program, or we just say for the time being there's no charge to be in Palo Alto Green, pending we figure out what the next move is. But let's declare victory. Let's capture the value of the brand, and let's rethink the programs that fit underneath the brand. That's where I would like to come down. So from a practical standpoint, I agree with the 1B recommendation, just with a caveat. I don't agree with terminate the full needs program. I think we hang on to that in some fashion, even if it becomes a zero cost model for the time being while we figure out our next move.
Thank you, Commissioner Walfogel. I'd like to go next to Commissioner Chang, if that's okay.
So I have a few questions for staff as I'm mulling over some of this too. To Commissioner Melton's point, has it been done before, as far as you know, to green a carbon neutral electric supply? I mean, that includes, the hydro. I mean, do you know of any other place that's done it?
All right. I don't know of any other utilities that have the same problem that we have, that have a carbon neutral portfolio and still offer a voluntary program. Well, some of the Northwest utilities that have a lot of hydro tend to have carbon neutral, but I don't know if they offer a voluntary program such as ours.
Okay. Well, I mean, to Commissioner Melton's point, it does seem a bit odd to me as well in that sense, but I do want to just call attention to a few of the comments that were mailed in to. I think there was some support for that option number 3 from some customers, residential and commercial customers. So I do want to make sure that we do consider that they're looking at, from my understanding of some of the comments, some of the non-carbon benefits of renewables and some of the concern about the environmental concerns about large hydro. So I do want to make sure to recognize that. I do agree, we definitely should not terminate the program. I think we've had a lot of great success with the program. There's a lot of customers, I think, who are very happy with it. So definitely don't terminate it. As to these 3 options, or the other options in front of us, I'm curious, when customers were surveyed about what their thoughts were, what options were put in front of them?
I don't think the survey involved showing options. It was mostly around what were their motivators. And, it was mostly environmental considerations, including greenhouse gas reductions and support of renewables.
Okay.
Do you remember more completely?
Okay. So out of these 3 options that have been laid out and that staff has laid out for us in front of us here, none of them seem quite ideal to me. One, I mean, from the concern that Commissioner Melton raised to it, and what staff has, I think, confirmed in my mind too, that it hasn't really been done to sort of green a carbon neutral supply already. I do have a question, I guess, from staff's perspective, and this maybe builds up a little bit on Commissioner Walfogel's comment too. Can you explain a little bit of the reasoning and sort of the push to really for a January 1, 2014 implementation date versus perhaps holding off and taking time to develop another alternative?
So we actually would propose to do it sooner than that. We'd propose to implement a new program as soon as the council acts, to redefine it in pretty much instantly, because we can, and because we too are concerned right now that we're greening up 100% of the portfolio, not just the non-renewable pieces by state definition piece of the portfolio. So we want to make sure we're clear on what customers are purchasing at this point. And we would be capable of implementing something right away if it's aligned with something that we're proposing here. Doesn't have to be exact, but there's certainly something like that.
I guess my I guess, thought about that is that, I mean, I think what I'm reading and sort of understanding in terms of the desire to be able to implement something really quickly is to not lose advantage of the momentum, the interest of customers, the brand that's been built. So I can understand some of that, but I also don't want that to be a restriction for us looking at the full span of alternatives that may make sense, but may take a little bit longer to implement. So I would encourage, I mean, I think from my perspective, I mean, I think either 1B or 1C would be one of the ones that would go forward with the options that are laid forward here. But in the longer term, I would encourage us to look at some other options too, and maybe some changes to the Palo Alto Green program in the future if we do go forward with one of these immediate options. I do, fully support the plan to look into a community solar program. I think that's a really good idea. It's a more concrete, option. It's not a rec. It's actual renewables in the system. And then also to look at, and I think I've raised this before too, but some of the other benefits of renewables that are not carbon related, and primarily in my mind I'm thinking is some of the hedging benefit, because renewables, the fuel is free, whereas even yes, we are greening through RECs some of the rest of our supply, but it's natural gas too, and natural gas prices are can fluctuate. And programs I think that I raised in the past too, like Austin, have actually a sort of a hedging program or a program that lets customers take advantage of the hedging benefits of renewables. So I'd really encourage us to look at that, and would be a little bit curious, to hear from staff if why that sort of type of option was taken off the table. I understand that right now Palo Alto Green, the way the program operates is sort of an opt-in, opt-out model at any time, and perhaps to really truly do more of a hedging type of program that would require some advanced sign-ups and for specified chunks of time and things like that. But wondering if what other thought that staff had given to that kind of alternative, even for the longer term.
Yeah, it was probably more a risk-based assessment. You do have to have a significant term commitment from customers. They can't just leave. What do we do if they actually leave the city? What are we going to do there? It's kind of stranded asset for us, or stranded cost for us. So because of that, we said, well, we could do a separate program.
Okay.
We could do a number of separate programs where customers can opt for those. Doing something like this doesn't preclude that sort of consideration, including community solar. Again, we were sort of holding to the tenets of the way that Palo Alto Green was originally developed, in that customers, and we've had customers who've been upset about a rate increase or whatever, saying, no, I don't want to be in your Palo Alto Green program anymore. We let them, whatever they
Sure.
want, we do it. And sometimes they come back. And so it's the way the program was designed, and we're holding to that design, or we're proposing to hold to that design.
Well, I would encourage definitely us to be looking at, if it has to be outside of the Palo Alto Green label, to look at programs like that. Maybe that hedging type of program might make more sense for larger commercial customers that are less likely to just pick up and leave, really suddenly. But I know that there have been programs I've done elsewhere in the country that encourage us to look at.
Yeah, our intent is to come back in December with the plan on all of these different solar alternatives and how to grow that solar for Palo Alto, and what the right mix is per market segment of program offerings, and how we'd actually implement them and structure them. So that's our intent.
Great. Well, look,
But just another note in terms of the hedging natural gas fuel costs, because of our renewable portfolio standard, we will have quite a bit of renewable in our portfolio. 50% will be non-natural gas, and the other 50% will essentially be hydro in an average year. So from a portfolio standpoint, we're already there.
and that's 2017 was the target?
In 2017, yeah.
I guess my just final comment is about a potential green gas program. I share Commissioner Melton's concerns about just the quality of offsets. I think there are some concerns about it. Offsets have been somewhat of a wild west, area, definitely gives me some more comfort to know that you're thinking about looking at the ARB offsets, and the rigor that they're looking at the protocols. But I think that it still may be a concern to some customers about the idea of using offsets. And I know, Monica, you highlighted the cost of actual biogas, green gas, and from that side of things, it does, in my mind, the transaction costs seem to just be so high on that side that it probably doesn't make sense to do. And I'm not sure if there's other. I mean, the only way that it would make sense in my mind is if Palo Alto can partner with others who are also aiming to buy into these projects, just to aggregate purchases. That's the only way it would even make remote sense in my mind.
And we have looked at that as well with
How?
with
Yeah.
Northern California Power Agency. We went in with other cities to look at a study at some biogas facilities, and they didn't pan out either.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a question relative to this. Would you be more excited about fuel switching programs? I mean, rather than promoting biogas, you'd be more excited about promoting the use of our clean electricity versus our dirty gas? Or, I mean, what's your thought in that dimension?
I guess once we do reach the point of being more closely to the actual 100% renewables, I mean, that might be a little bit more attractive in my mind, I guess. I haven't thought through that entirely, but yeah, perhaps.
Thanks.
I wanted to acknowledge just an incredible amount of work over months done by staff.
Sorry, I completely failed to say that. No, staff has put in an incredible amount of work, and I didn't mean to forget to say that.
Yeah, I just brought that up to make you look bad,
Yes.
Audrey. It turns out they really haven't done squat, but I figured if I said it, it would make you look bad. Yeah, I want to acknowledge the incredible amount of work by staff and concerned citizens and members of the UAC over many months on this issue. I don't want to make many comments about Palo Alto green gas and community solar and fuel switching and so forth. I'm glad that staff intends to look into those in the months ahead, and I look forward to discussing them when staff's ready to bring it before the commission. I do want to talk about Palo Alto Green because we are being asked to take action on that tonight. Palo Alto Green was created to solve a very specific problem. Happily, that specific problem no longer exists. This is a happy problem we're facing tonight. And we're in this happy situation because of the terrific work of staff and City Council and the Utilities Commission over many, many years that have brought us to this situation of having a carbon-free electric portfolio with very little rate impact to our consumers. And so plenty of other environmental problems exist. As Carl Knapp pointed out in the letter that's now in the public record, hydro has all kinds of environmental impact other than greenhouse gas emissions, and as we've been discussing tonight, gas is clearly a fossil fuel and has greenhouse gas implications. So there's plenty of other environmental problems that we should be addressing. The question is there an appropriate way to use Palo Alto Green to address those problems? And I've come to the conclusion, and apparently staff has as well, that Palo Alto Green isn't a good fit with most of those problems. Some of those reasons are structural. We just heard Director Fong comment on that. Part of it, I think, is a matter of being consistent to the reasons why Palo Alto Green was created in the first place, and I think is a matter of credibility and integrity. We need to be careful before drifting too far in reshaping Palo Alto Green from its original intent. I guess I would, if it's okay with the chair, like to read just a couple sentences from Carl Knapp's letter because they struck me as significant. Carl is arguing for what's been called tonight the third option as opposed to the first or second option. For those of you who don't know Carl, he used to be on the staff here at the city in the utilities area, and he now works in the energy space as well as at Stanford. And he writes to say that sustainable energy is not just about climate change or being climate neutral, that there are many reasons why large-scale hydroelectricity is not included in the state's definition of eligible renewable resources. He goes on to say, although large hydro does exhibit very low greenhouse gas emissions, it imparts a number of significant environmental impacts ranging from water use, impeding fish migration, and fish kill. He claims that the original CMR establishing Palo Alto Green included essentially no discussion of climate change as a driver. Instead, it focused on City of Palo Alto Utilities customer preferences. So he's arguing that it would certainly be consistent with the original intent of Palo Alto Green to do the sort of thing that staff is arguing for, where there'd be a 0.2 cent rate premium to green up, if you will, what's already green, the large hydro. I also want to point out that in that, but on the opposite side, I want to point out, in that third option, we're talking about administrative costs of $250,000 a year for a program that's going to generate $140,000 a year of revenue. So in any sort of rational revenue-based model, it makes no sense at all to continue Palo Alto Green in any of the forms presented tonight. And that $250K is not even including the cost of the RECs. That's just the administrative cost of running the program. So we're talking about spending more running a program than the program is going to generate even before we go off and buy the RECs. That doesn't necessarily mean we shouldn't continue it. As we've discussed tonight, there can be plenty of other reasons to continue it. We can continue it because of the value of the brand. We can continue it, I think also, and no one's really discussed this tonight, as a transitional program. We can keep it around for a year as staff continues to evaluate things like green gas and community solar and plans for EVs and so on. Then the program is still alive, customers are still involved, customers are still used to contributing to it. And if 6 or 12 months from now we decide that some of these new programs are perhaps something that can be blended in with Palo Alto Green, we still have Palo Alto Green up and running to do that with. So those are my thoughts on it. I guess I want to share one other thought. If everyone has the feeling that we're looking at a number of options that are far from ideal, I think that means we actually understand what's going on here. We have a program where the rate premium has been 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour, and as a result it's been generating $1.05 million a year. But there's no longer any justification for continuing to charge that. And none of the programs that staff's put forward include continuing a program at anywhere near that amount. So all of the changes that we're considering tonight absolutely leave money on the table, or more accurately, leave money in the hands of the ratepayers. From a ratepayer point of view, that's a great thing to do. We're telling them they don't have to go on subsidizing this program anymore. I think the reason why we're all struggling with that is this has been terrific that our ratepayers want to spend some of their own money to do environmental good, and it seems a shame to turn that off. But again, none of the options before us tonight and none of the options that have seriously been considered during the last few months provide any alternative to that. We're simply not ready to implement any program that would provide justification for customers continuing to add 1.5 cents a kilowatt hour or anything like that to their bill. So those are my comments. Those are the things that I find myself thinking about as I decide where I come down on this. I don't particularly know where I'm going to vote tonight. I want to hear the rest of my colleagues' comments and discussion. I find myself very motivated by Carl Knapp's and arguments that have been echoed by others for continuing the program in the form that staff's recommended. I'm also very sensitive to the absurdity of a program that costs more to administer than the revenue it generates.
Thank you, Commissioner Eglash. Commissioner Foster?
Thanks. I agree with the comments made by, I think, all of my colleagues, as well as by Walt Hayes and Bruce Hodge this evening. I think eliminating the nation's leading voluntary green power procurement program is a non-starter. Thus, I eliminate the first option, but I also eliminate the second option because the second option gets rid of the residential portion of Palo Alto Green. So to me, the first two options, the ones labeled A and B on the slides, are not viable. With respect to the third option, I found Carl Knapp's letter persuasive on the portion of the option that is related to the commercial customers. Having said that, I do not believe the proposal for residential customers in the third option is the right one. I believe a program that in essence substitutes one form of carbon-free electricity for another will be of limited interest to Palo Alto residents. I think the value of eligible renewables such as wind and solar over large-scale hydro will be lost on most people. I have come to strongly support a gas offset program. Like some others here, I had some initial concerns about whether offsets were the Wild West, as someone said, I think that was you, Audrey, said, were the right thing. But I am persuaded by Jane's comments on CARB-certified offsets as a way to go. I'd believe in that. In Mary Nichols, we trust is my motto. Mary Nichols is the chair of CARB. So I'm good with that. So I have now come to strongly support that idea. I'm also a very big supporter of community solar. I think that really makes sense in this city. We've seen some innovative ideas for how to do it. I reluctantly conclude that community solar probably is not a good fit with the Palo Alto Green program for reasons that Director Fong has discussed with me over time about the capital acquisition portion of sort of the one-time capital acquisition cost for community solar versus the ongoing nature of Palo Alto Green. So I think we absolutely should pursue community solar, but probably outside of Palo Alto Green. Let's see. So I would encourage us to move forward on that, possibly working with our existing ad hoc committee or perhaps a new ad hoc committee on community solar. I think that's one where an ad hoc committee may be of help. And Director Fong, you can chime in on that when you want. Let's see. In addition, let me see. So the bottom line is here's what I would recommend, or what I recommend that we recommend to the City Council. I think we should immediately, I forgot to say one other thing I was going to say. I am also very supportive of the solar PV, community solar PV donation concept that has been raised, the idea of donating funds to put solar panels on roofs, and to me, to keep it simple, on PAUSD roofs, Palo Alto School System. The Palo Alto School System has enormous support on the community, and taking some of the money out of the Palo Alto Green program, or using the money from the Palo Alto Green program to put solar on school roofs, I think would be very popular with the people who are current PA Green customers. It creates more distributed solar in Palo Alto. Seems like a winner to me. So my recommendation would be we immediately redirect the City Council immediately redirects Palo Alto Green funds to a community solar donation with all funds used to purchase solar PV and or solar hot water heaters on Palo Alto Unified School District buildings. That's the first point. The second point is that we immediately, or they, the City Council, immediately cuts the Palo Alto Green premium in half, reduces the cost. And the reason I say that is in anticipation next year of a Palo Alto gas offset program. And my review of the numbers is if you cut the current PA Green premium in half and then institute an offset program, as I look at the numbers, you're ending up with a total cost that's about what it is now. So at the end of the day, and if I'm losing anyone, let me know. But again, the idea, cut the current premium in half, direct those funds to the Palo Alto School System for solar panels, then next year institute a green gas offset program, and now your total cost is about where it is now. And so that's my next recommendation. My third recommendation is that the city council should direct CPAU to put together a green gas program. And my fourth recommendation is to adopt the staff's recommendation on commercial blocks. In other words, it's the second bullet of the third choice. Commercial customer blocks purchase rate. Keep that in place. There seems to be a desire for that. My one concern on that is Commissioner Eglash's comment on the cost of implementing that, but perhaps that cost can be lower than the $250,000. So that is my somewhat complicated proposal, and I'm happy to reiterate it or explain it if need be.
So if I may, staff and the ad hoc committee did discuss the possibility of allowing ratepayers to contribute money targeted toward PV or solar hot water on school roofs. So maybe staff could comment on their thoughts there and why that didn't become part of tonight's recommendation.
I think we think that's a good program too. We still like that program, but I think it's going to be in the context of this larger local solar strategy. It's also a program that would take us a little bit longer to develop. There's issues around what role the city would play, what sort of liability that would be none that the city would take on in such a program, and so developing those agreements and figuring out how to get a developer to do this. There's many ways to do it. We've thought of. We can't do that and get that program in time for the need to change this program, as you guys are pretty much all saying, sooner than later. And so that's why it kind of fell to, it's going to have to come back in the context of this larger strategy. And it's the other issue of just not being as good of a fit also for the Palo Green model.
Thank you. That's also how I recall the discussion.
Let me just comment on that for a moment. The community solar PV donation program, as outlined in the staff memo, talked about a program in which the funds could go to different nonprofits, schools, participants in the program would vote. I love the idea. It's complicated. I love complicated things, but I think it is maybe too complicated. And that's why I think we keep it simple. It just goes to the schools. There's no voting. There's no nothing. In terms of liability, I'd say you transfer. Actually for this one, I'd keep it as simple as possible. The funds are transferred to the school district with the understanding they spend it only on solar panels and solar hot water. The city has zero liability. Any liability rests with the school district. End of story. We're all done. And I guarantee you, if we call up the school district tomorrow and make that offer to them, they'll accept it faster than anything. So I think we can keep it pretty simple and have something ready to go in 2 months there by the time the city council adopts it.
Are you sure that our lawyer will even let us transfer money to the
Well,
school district?
that's a different issue, but
It's wrapped in, it's all together. It's what we have.
Voluntary funding.
That's all part of it.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to make my comments, and then we can go on from there. I want to thank the staff for working on this. It's a real sincere effort to try and come up with a follow-on to what's been a wonderfully fantastic program that we've had. And I can tell you guys have put in a lot of thought and effort into making this good. I also want to thank Audrey Chang and Steve Eglash for taking on the responsibility of being on the subcommittee, and I think it's a great way to involve, sort of the point of view of the members of the public, and I really appreciate you guys taking the extra time to do that, and that extra service to the commission. I also want to thank the public. This is another one of these issues where we received quite a bit of comments, all of which were in favor of, uniformly in favor of keeping the program. I want to thank in particular Bruce Hodge and Walt Hayes for their continued vigilance in making sure that we're doing the right thing. As Director Fong noted, in her report today, that we are number one. We've got this great program. The Palo Green leadership and in important environmental area and also does something important. So I believe also, as Walt said, that there's no reason that we should terminate this valuable brand, and I think keeping it alive and keeping it going is critical. Also, like Commissioner Eglash said, there's no reason to make this a money loser. So I think my recommendation would be make sure that whatever we do, it's cost neutral, revenue neutral. And I did some math, and it looked like it would be 0.5 cents instead of 0.2 cents. But whatever the right number is, that would be my recommendation. So ultimately, I say that we should go with staff recommendation 1C and staff recommendation 2. And keep it simple to do that. I think that as part of 2, I would say, we want to keep on looking at these other options for what we could do with the program. So whether that's, giving the money to the schools or putting solar in the schools or elsewhere, I think that could be part of what we do as number 2. But, I see this as the 1C as a transition from this fantastic program we have, do it as quickly as possible. I appreciate the thoughtful approach that you all are taking and how quickly we can make that transition. You've already made that quicker than you predicted before. And then once we get to whatever that program is, whatever we morph this fantastic program into its new future fantastic program, that we make a big push to get people to sign up. And I think we could maybe through this transition, we can actually bring even more people onto this program. So my recommendation is that we go with 1C and 2, and that we bring that to the City Council and get them moving and get this program done as quickly as possible, and then make a big push to increasing the membership, the amount of people that we've got on the program.
I actually think that everybody's closer than it sounds, but I just have a question for you, which is relative to this. Do you believe that the purchasing recs piece of 1C is the key piece, or would you rather do that and start to build a war chest toward programs to be named later, i.e. something like Commissioner Foster's proposed, or some other things that we'll be thinking about in the future? I mean, I just wonder whether the rec piece is the key piece of the proposal.
Yeah, I think that's a more thoughtful approach to what I'm talking about, and that I like that a lot. I agree. I don't see any need, except for the idea of keeping the program going. Right. There's no need to specifically buy recs, because I actually don't think greening up something that's already green is necessary. So if it,
have to price it around something appropriate to
that I agree with that. I just want to make sure that we keep the program going, and that's my thought. Thanks.
I have a question on what I don't understand what the program would be if no recs were purchased at all. What would be the program?
And what are we telling our customers? Trust us. We're collecting the money. You pay in. We're going to develop. We'll tell you later what we're going to spend it on. Sorry, this is just a staff perspective. It makes me like
seems to work for Google.
I know, but we're a municipality. We don't take risks, so my gut is telling me I can't sell that one. But that's all.
Perhaps I can comment on that and a couple related things. To that particular point, I think there is an issue with saying to ratepayers, give us the money and we're going to hang on to it and figure out what to do with it later. But trust us, we'll do some sensible environmental thing that I'm sure if we knew what it was and you knew what it was, you'd agree with it. So go ahead and give us the money now. I think it is, at least as Director Fong said, hard to market. It may even raise some legal issues or issues of integrity, and I'm not sure we want to go down the path of the city of Palo Alto interacting with its customers in that form. I wanted to go back to the comment of at 2 cents, 0.2 of a cent of kilowatt hour being money losing, and the possibility that at 0.5 cents a kilowatt hour, it's break even. This sort of rate redesign on the fly is really hazardous, and I wanted to just point out a couple of concerns that I have. First of all, the administrative costs are largely fixed, and so all of these calculations of how much money you're going to make or lose depend on what you predict the participation's going to be. It is really hard to know what the participation's going to be because we're making a major change to the program. And, you know, maybe participation will go up, maybe it'll go down, but we really don't know. So these are all just guesses, and they're guesses that aren't based on a whole lot. Even assuming that the participation assumptions in the staff memo are correct and that we would be break even at 0.5 cents a kilowatt hour, I think there's really a problem with setting the rate to cover the administrative costs when the administrative costs are several times the amount of money you're spending on RECs. I'm really concerned that ratepayers are going to do the arithmetic that says they're going to give us 0.5 cents a kilowatt hour, and we're going to spend whatever it turns out to be, 0.3 or 0.4 cents a kilowatt hour on management and administrative costs, and we're going to spend 0.1 cents of that 0.5 on buying RECs to green things up. That's not a very efficient use of our ratepayers' money, and so while I think it's appealing at an aggregate level that you're covering your administrative costs, I think it doesn't solve the problem at the level of the calculation that the ratepayers are likely to do. So if we decide that we want to recommend that we continue with Palo Alto Green, I would encourage us to keep it at the 0.2 cents a kilowatt hour that staff has recommended. It's a small number, and the advantage of it being a small number is the things we're doing with it. Buying RECs is also a small number. And if 6 or 12 months from now we have an idea for a better expanded program and we want to raise the premium in response to that, that's a separate issue.
Thanks. I have two thoughts in response. First one is about the question of collecting more money than we need to do what we're doing. We are doing that now. So the idea that we would somehow question doing that in this transition period, but not question the fact that we've over-collected several $100,000s in the past, doesn't seem consistent to me. It doesn't necessarily mean that one bad makes two bads make a good, but I just would point that out. And the second thought is, yeah, I don't want to. I agree. I don't want to make. I apologize that I said 0.5 cents. I was just trying to. I want to make the point that I'd rather we didn't spend that we lost money on the program. But I hear what you're saying. It's just that kind of knee-jerk reaction to losing money on that, but I hear what you're saying.
I agree with the comments that and the questions that Asher raised. The thing that bothers me most about the 1C option is this idea of buying RECs to green up green power. And I think we ought to John's point, we ought to be able to define if we want to keep the program going, we need to define another use of funds for the money that is generated by that 0.2 cent level of income that doesn't involve buying RECs, that is perhaps seed money for the development of the getting seed money to get the solar roof for PAUSD going, or some use of funds that is generated toward a program that I think we all think that once staff gets developed is going to be a big boon to the city, which is the local solar thing, and clearly if we put it out as the city cooperating with the school district to achieve a dual goal here. I think that's a very saleable thought to our customers, to be able to say, okay, you're putting in a lower amount than you used to, and we're shifting the focus of the program to local solar, and this is seed money to help the school district be a part of that. You know, make up some words. That's what you guys are good at. But yeah. But I think buying RECs to green up hydropower is not the saleable way to keep this program going.
Okay. To try and put together a motion on this, which you know I love to do, is going to be a little complicated. So I'm just going to say a couple of points as we head in that direction. I'm hearing a lot of support for staff recommendation number 2. Is there anyone who doesn't agree with staff recommendation number 2? Okay. With respect to staff recommendation 1C bullet 2, which is commercial customer blocks, are folks okay with that one? No, I don't hear a lot of objection to that one either.
I think as long as it's cost neutral in the framework of whatever the big picture is.
Well, let's ask staff the question. If the only thing we're buying RECs for is the commercial customer blocks, does that bring down the administrative cost to some extent, or is it still is it less intensive to do it just for commercial? Yes. Director Fong is nodding her head. She's saying, okay, all right, so I'm encouraged by that comment. Okay, now we get to the more complicated stuff, and it's the residential portion. So a couple of things. So Asher, I'm not hearing a ton of support. I hear what you're saying. I'm not hearing a ton of support for continuing to charge without having a use and banking the money. I'm hearing some significant concern from Director Fong, from Commissioner Eglash, and I like the idea, but I sort of share the concern. So unless anyone pushes hard or you push hard, I'm prepared to not include that among the options. Are folks okay? Are you okay with that if I?
Well, let's see where you're.
Okay, well, all right, so I'm just letting people know where I'm going here. Okay, the other one, now.
I'm not sure that I was hearing.
Okay, now that
there was a split
now that I've caused angst to my left, I'll cause angst to my right, and Commissioner Cook, I'm not hearing a ton of support on the first bullet, on the greening up the hydro. Okay, so that my proposal here is going to not include either of these. And so it really boils down to, but I think there's a lot of support for keeping the program going somehow or other. And so I think the two viable ideas are either simply suspend collection of payments on it until we have something, whether it's green gas or whatever else we come up with, or go for this Palo Alto School District idea. And it's kind of one or the other, and I'm curious to know what folks think. Commissioner Eglash?
Well, I just want to interject for a minute to say that I think there is another option that was suggested by yours and Commissioner Melton's comments, and that's to basically direct staff to go back and say all of these options are unacceptable that they've come forward tonight, and we want the program to continue in its current form at 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour until they come back with what we consider an acceptable plan, and an acceptable plan might include some of these things like a Palo Alto School District plan.
So the reason, that's a good point, the reason I don't think that works is because at this point I do reluctantly accept the argument that we are collecting funds for something that is not needed. And I've heard feedback from some members of the City Council who are concerned about that point. So I do think the collecting of funds for the current program probably has to stop.
Continuing to buy RECs.
Right, exactly. So I don't think that's a viable option. Others can disagree with me, I'm just me, but that's my opinion. So out of curiosity, just between the two things I threw out there, which was just
So you're in the effective approach is either to go with 1B and 2, or to go with 2 and then 1C, where the money for the for the consumers, for the households, and not the commercial side, but for the other customers, is going to this school program.
Right, with one very key point. If we call it 1B, I would change the word terminate to suspend.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. So it's either suspend it or reallocate it to the schools.
May I ask if staff has developed any recommendations between 1B and 1C? I don't think I heard in tonight's presentation any advice or recommendation from staff.
I think you heard correctly, for various reasons.
So there must have been divergent opinions with different members of staff having different thoughts?
We really wanted you all to make a recommendation to the council, and we wanted to know what you all, where you all were going to be.
Let me just comment. Commissioner Waldfogel raises a point that I should be clear about what I mean by suspend. What I mean is keep everyone enrolled in the program and simply charge them nothing until such time as we have the green gas program or whatever else we implement. So that's what I mean by suspend. Suspend the collection of funds.
Don't terminate the program, suspend the collection.
Only question is, wait, what about the recs so that they actually have a Palo Alto Green program?
We suspend the collection of funds and stop buying recs. For residential. The commercial one continues as you described. So we have a program that is suspended. We do not collect funds. We do not buy recs.
I believe what Commissioner Foster's proposing is straightforward. We're going to not exacerbate the problem of continuing to collect money at the rate of 1.5 cents a kilowatt hour, but we're not going to shut down and mothball and file away the program because we might come up with something some way we want to recast the program in the future. Director Fong, do you have a problem with that concept? It seemed like you did.
Listening,
No, she's not. So she has no problem.
We should go into an aggressive recruiting effort while it's free.
You don't get 100%
Mine was just an accounting question to the assistant director. I'm comfortable with her answer.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm just again curious to know if folks prefer the suspension idea or prefer the Palo Alto schools idea.
I absolutely love the schools and want to do whatever we can to the schools. In this case, I would say go with the suspension. Go with 1B, make it suspension. It's sort of a terminology thing, but suspension instead of termination, and then go with number 2.
I'd like to ask our subcommittee a question about the, I kind of lost it now. But you guys sort of decided that the schools program or the local solar, any of those sorts of things didn't really fit under Palo Alto Green. So is that, did I hear that correctly?
I'll speak for myself. I don't think that it doesn't fit, and so I think it could work. I think it could work within the Palo Alto Green, but I think it's part of this year-long period, or what ends up being 9 months, or it depends on how you count the time, until July of next year. Staff is looking at this, and perhaps some subcommittee or we're getting city council input, we're getting public input, we're getting our input to designing the program, and that's what happens until July.
Okay, so then, so you guys have.
Well, that's a great answer. I mean, there was a lot of enthusiasm on the part of the ad hoc subcommittee and staff for many of those ideas, but they're complicated. There was just no practical way that any of those attractive ideas could be blended into the Palo Alto Green program quickly enough to address the sense of urgency that we're all feeling about the collection at the higher rate.
Okay, so I'm still trying to simplify the choices here. If we could, it seems to me then that we have, the choice is to collect the .2 cents for Palo Alto Green and define the use of funds, as I said a few minutes ago, as seed funds for the local solar school, thing, or suspend, that is, collect no more funds, because we don't have a use of funds that fits under Palo Alto Green. So,
Or option 1C, collect it and use it to buy Rex.
I am.
No, I know you're not. I know, no. You've made that perfectly clear. I'm pointing out that that's an additional option.
Yeah.
It's an option you don't support, but it's clearly an additional option. Staff's put it in front of us.
Let me say, by the way, guys, one of the reasons I support the school, I understand the simplest thing is just say suspend, and this may be where we're heading, suspend, and we'll come back next year, and maybe we'll do some schools, and maybe we'll do some green gas. I think, and the reason I came up with a school idea the way I did is it's very simple, and I think it can be implemented now without 6 months of study and so on and so forth. And I think there is value to saying we're converting to something else now instead of suspending. That's why I prefer it, although if you all disagree.
But again, Commissioner Foster, we don't get to create programs or procedures up here. We are advisory. So if you believe that, I think it is very clear that what you do is you move that we tell staff that these options that they put in front of us, these recommendations are all unacceptable, and they should go back and develop one with the characteristics you described. I think the process is clear. You can't, it's not, we don't have the authority or the right or the ability to sit here and say it's so simple, we're going to design it tonight.
But here's the other thing. We also don't have the authority to tell them to do anything. All we can do is advise the city council.
Yes, so we can so you can move that we reject everything they brought in front of us.
Right.
In the interest of going back and designing something with the characteristics you described. That is the mechanism for doing what you want to do.
So what I'm still trying to figure out exactly what the motion is going to be. I'm actually going to recommend that we advise that we do what they want to do with respect to point 2 and with respect to the second bullet of point C, 1C, and that we just make a slightly different recommendation with respect to the residential program. And I'm still sort of trying to get my hands around whether to include the school or just say suspend. Commissioner Chang, do you have any thoughts on that issue?
My sense is just the suspend option seems to be the simplest one to go forward with right now.
You guys have any particular preference on suspend versus schools?
Okay, so you said that you like complicated things. I like them even better, but I'll try to be. I'll still try to keep it simple. There's a couple things here. Clearly there are a couple things we agree on. You've mentioned those. Suspend is the easy choice, and I'll support that if that's the only thing that's on the table. What's a little awkward here is when I put my my marketing and sales hat on, we have a percentage of our customers who've said that they're willing to pay 1.5 cents for something that's extremely intangible. And we're saying, well, our only choices now are to take that 1.5 cent premium customer and convert them to a 0.2 cent premium customer, which is leaving 1.3 cents on the table of people's willingness to pay for something very intangible. So we're leaving money on the table. So that one feels weird to me. I agree with Commissioner Melton that we shouldn't spend that money on additional RECs. I think that's an inappropriate use of the money. I also agree with Commissioner Iglash that it's a little awkward to try to design what we'll do on the fly here. We don't know what it will take to negotiate agreements with the schools or with other entities. I mean, we can all suspect that there's willingness for the counterparty to play with us, but we don't know that today. I think it would be nice to know that. I think suspend is the easiest thing to do, but it just gives me heartburn that we're leaving a whole bunch of money on the table. And I really like this seed money idea, which is why I kind of agreed with the 0.5 cent, with the 0.5 cent number, which is rate design on the fly, but I kind of agreed with that because we know we want to do something. We just don't know what it is yet.
Okay. I'm gonna make a motion, and if it fails, I got a second motion, which will pass, Okay. I'm going out on a limb. Exactly. No. Okay, so my motion is basically what I said earlier, which is to recommend to the city council to, hang on, let me get this right. To direct staff to develop a Palo Alto green gas program to be implemented by July 2014. To, by the way, let me just interject for a second. Well, we could break it up into multiple parts, but just hang tight for a sec. Let me just ask a quick question of clarification. Is the commercial customer blocks exactly as it is now, or is that a change to the existing commercial program?
The only change is really the rate.
Okay, fine. Okay, so my second point would be to also recommend the city council adopt the staff's recommendation on the commercial customer blocks at 0.2 cents, exactly what the staff recommendation is. My third recommendation is with respect to the residential program, the rate immediately be cut in half and the funds be transferred to the Palo Alto School District for purchase of solar PV and hot water. And that's it. So that's my motion.
So you need a second.
I need a second.
So transfer or seed fund?
I'm saying transfer. I mean, Commissioner Waldfogle said transfer or seed fund. I'm not sure I know the difference between the funds are being allocated to the school
Well, it's
district
just
to
that
start buying TV.
it's hard for me to second or vote for a transfer of funds to somebody who's never said that
But
he or
here's-
she wants it.
I hear you, but remember, we are not voting to transfer the funds. We are voting for the city council to do so. And they'll go to the finance committee, it'll go to the city council, they can go through the niceties of, all figuring that stuff out, I'm sure they will. It's not for us to start negotiating with the school district or to tell CPAU to do so. It's merely a recommendation to the city council, they can revise it, change it, do whatever they want with it.
Okay, I've got a motion. Is there a second?
What a killer. Okay.
There's no second. I'd like to hear what your second.
So my second motion.
Actually, before
Is-
you kill
yeah.
that, would you accept an amendment to collect the money for a seed fund, as Commissioner Melton had discussed, where the transfer, the understanding would be that we're leading toward a program of the type you're proposing, but we just don't know what it is yet.
I would, yes, I would accept that amendment if you guys want to do that.
I'd second that.
So, just to make sure I understand, so. Yeah, I know. So when I was said, I think I said at least once, and maybe more than once, seed fund for the development of a local solar program, which particularly involving PAUSD rooftops, So I'm trying to tie the words seed fund to local solar, which is another part of the discussion in this whole program that you guys are going to take a year or so to look at and develop a program for, right? Huh?
Well, and just
Now, wait a minute, am I describing this not correctly? Is that not part of the program that you guys are, a next step program? Maybe
What we're proposing is to bring back a plan
yes.
with particular program ideas and then some sort of a schedule to implement those, or some programs that would fall out of that plan.
Right. And I'm talking about using the 0.2 cents to provide seed funding to help that program get going once you have once it's been, you've brought it out and it's been vetted and council has approved it and we'll have a chunk of money to get it off the ground.
And so in the meantime, before there is a program, you're just telling people that you're collecting money for a future program to be designed.
No, well, but you describe it, the nature of the program, local, solar, school district, roofs, I mean, you don't just say a program TBD because it's not TBD. It has a very definite purpose. I mean, you're developing a program to accomplish a specific goal. And it's not developed yet, but it will be. And that's what this money will be used for once the program's going. That's not too hard to explain. So that's what I meant when I said seed funds. Now, so.
Is that the friendly amendment that Asher made, John?
Recommend 1/2 of the current rate.
So 0.75.
Correct.
0.075, and was there
Isn't that half of the current rate?
0.75? Right. Okay,
The current rate is 1.5.
right,
cents.
right.
So it's
Is it a
half
flat
of that.
1.5 or is it 10%? We used to say numbers like 10%.
No, 1.5.
Okay.
Okay, because I heard Commissioner,
3/4 of 1 cent per
Okay.
kilowatt hour.
So
Okay.
we've got a motion, we've got a friendly amendment, and do you accept the friendly amendment?
So what happens next?
So then, and I had seconded.
And yes,
So,
so yeah.
So now we have,
So I'd like to make an alternative motion. While I respect everyone's enthusiasm for a higher rate, since we do have people that have voted with their pocketbooks, and I respect everyone's enthusiasm for doing something for the schools, I'm deeply troubled by the motion that's on the table. I can imagine any number of reasons why this thing that feels so simple to us sitting here tonight could ultimately fall apart. And until we give city staff a chance to look at it in detail, I think we can only begin to imagine whether it's as simple as we hope or not. If we tell ratepayers that we're collecting 0.75 cents per kilowatt hour to put solar on school roofs, and we ultimately end up not doing that, do we have to rebate the money? If we don't rebate the money, might the ratepayers sue the city to demand the money back? There's just, I think, a whole string of possible messy outcomes that we can only begin to imagine and worry about tonight. And so I think what we're describing here is very much well-intentioned and, in my opinion, very reckless. So I'm going to make an alternative motion. My alternative motion is that we approve Plan 1C and 2 exactly as recommended by the staff without any changes. Staff's been working on it for weeks, if not months, so it has had the vetting that some of these other ideas has not had. It keeps the program alive, and if in the near future we come up with a better way to evolve Palo Alto Green, in my opinion, by keeping it alive in the form recommended by staff, we've done something even better than suspending it. We've kept it warm and idling, and we can easily have a discussion in the near future on further modifying and evolving and approving it. So that's my motion. 1C, exactly as recommended by staff, and 2, exactly as recommended by staff.
Now, just in terms of our procedure, I assume, Chair Cook, but for all of us.
Before you
Yeah.
start discussion, I need a second.
Well,
Thank
I'm just discussing even what our process is.
So-
We can't
so-
talk about it before someone seconds it? Is that correct? Okay.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll see if there's a second, and then we'll just go from there. Is there a second on that? Okay, that might be strange, but actually, I would like to second that. Okay,
now we discuss that.
now we can discuss.
So I would agree with a lot of what Steve said if we were making a final decision tonight to start allocating the funds. But remember, we're just making a recommendation to the city council, which the full city council will not hear and act upon for 2 months, during which time that city attorney is going to be hard at work checking all the problems and all so on and so forth. So I think the danger of a reckless rushing into it based on not enough things, I think there's plenty of time. I think it can be designed very simply. I think both the school district and city can look at it, and I'm very confident the city will not rush into it. So because of that, because we're not making a final decision on the program, but merely making a recommendation, that's why I do not agree with Steve's proposal, even though otherwise I would if we were the final decision maker.
Okay, other comments? No more comments, then we'll vote on the motion.
So we're voting on
We're
Steve's
voting on the
motion.
alternative motion?
Right. Substitute motion.
Substitute motion, thank you. Was that you, Jane? Thank you. So the substitute motion is to approve as recommended, as written, 1C and 2. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, we have a 3-3 vote on that.
Okay, so now I think we go back to my motion, right?
So we'll go back to the original motion.
Okay, but hold it as amended, because I accepted the friendly amendment. So I've been trying to write.
Just out of curiosity, is there a reason why you're calling it a seed fund rather than just simply say establish a fund? Does the word seed suggest that you're going to ultimately need to go find additional funds somewhere else, or does that just meant to imply that this is the initial money?
I think it's
Or should we drop the word
This is
C?
the initial motion.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure that's true. I would think that you could start spending the money when you have a relatively modest amount. $50,000, $100,000 is enough for a small solar installation. Roof needs to be prepared, electrical, but I guess I was just curious. I was just curious, does the word seed add anything to that? Or do you want to delete the word seed and just say establish a fund?
I would make fund is fine.
Well,
Okay,
Not, just point of clarification. So a clarification question. So when we're saying a community local solar program, is that specifically around this, as the staff has laid out the options, more of the donation model versus the share versus investment?
The
And-
donation.
Donation model.
It's the donation. I assume by not limiting it to the schools, we're probably saying it could be city buildings or maybe nonprofits and so on and so forth. But it is not the.
It's not the share or the investment.
Should we include the word donation for a community
For
local?
clarity.
For
I think-
clarity,
I
yes.
think-
So for a community local solar.
So,
yeah, I agree with that. So we have a motion, second with some friendly amendments, and now now we're gonna have a discussion.
I'd like to come back to the staff memo on the subject where they considered a community solar PV donation program and thought through the implementation issues. And they concluded that there was significant work to finalize program design. I'm reading from their memo, including deciding what role the city will play and how much risk the city is willing to take on. They pointed out that new contracts with project developers will need to be developed, that staff or third-party contractors will be needed to identify project sites and secure all necessary arrangements. Staff concluded that as attractive as this is, and it is hugely attractive, that they're not able to implement it by January 2014. So, in my opinion, staff has considered this and given us their opinion. And so if my colleagues, if the UAC chooses to go ahead with the current motion, I think we should recognize that we are recommending precisely against staff's considered views on the subject.
I think staff is pointing out to us that one of the criteria was implement by January of 2014. And we are saying, we don't care. We understand that it won't be ready by January of 2014, but we think the program is the right way to go. And the January 2014 date is not important.
I understand, and I guess what we all need to think about before voting is how comfortable are we with the risks of starting to collect money for a program that's not yet defined. Now, as Commissioner Foster has pointed out, we're just making a recommendation tonight. Finance is going to look at it a month from now, City Council a month after that. But if we accept what Commissioner Melton just said, that the program design won't be ready for implementation by January 2014, then we are starting the city down a path tonight that will lead to the city collecting funds before the program's ready for implementation. Yes, staff will have had some time to think through the implementation issues and work through some of the risks, but we are recommending to start collecting money before a program's designed, and I think we all need to think through whether we think that's appropriate and proper or not. I'm quite concerned that it's not a wise thing to do.
Well, and the alternative to that is not to collect the money, which means we go to 1B and change terminate to suspend. And that way we don't collect the money.
I think the reality is if the staff is going to go to the city council, the finance committee, and then the full city council and say, well, we can't, well, they may or may not say we can't implement it as fast as the UAC is recommending, or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll say, yeah, actually, we could do this school part quickly, or they don't and say we can't, in which case the city council will probably say, okay, let's go with the UAC recommendation, but give it a few months and we'll suspend the program in the meantime. And everyone lives happily ever after. But I think this way we get across the point of what we're recommending, and the city council, I'm sure, will fine-tune the details. They're not going to just rubber stamp what we say here.
I think the other message it sends is, and you were just reading from it, is we are coming down with full support, including seed funds, for the community solar PV donation program, or the community solar hot water. This donation program that's described in attachment A, that we are clearly coming down on the side of implementing something along those lines.
Okay, I think we've had a good, healthy discussion on this, and so I'm ready to take a vote. So as long as everyone understands what we're voting on, you guys. Okay, so all in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay. Holy smokes. 3-3.
3-3.
I was sure that one was getting through.
Okay.
I'd like to propose now that we've cleared the table, I'll propose a new motion.
Thank you.
I propose that we recommend to City Council staff recommendation 1B, changing the first word from terminate to suspend, and item 2 as written.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion?
I guess I have a question of procedure. Can we go back and reintroduce the substitute motion that failed earlier? Can I introduce a substitute motion now that's exactly the same as the substitute motion I introduced before? So I would like to introduce a substitute motion. The same substitute motion that I introduced.
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner.
Wait, I second that.
Yeah, he seconded that.
Commissioner Milton,
Yeah,
not
that's fine.
Commissioner Engel.
Yeah, so we do have a second for
Yeah.
Commissioner Melton's motion. Are you caught up?
You're instituting a substitute.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce a substitute motion, and the substitute motion is the same one that you may recall from earlier this evening. That's right.
That was hours ago.
That's
We
right.
might have to refresh
That's right, but
this.
It's going to look a whole lot more attractive as the night gets on. And so the substitute motion is to recommend staff recommendation 1C as proposed and staff recommendation 2 as proposed.
Okay, we have a what is it called?
Substitute.
Substitute motion. Is there a second? I second it. We've already had discussion. Does anyone else want to say anything more on this?
So you're seconding his.
I'm seconding his. So let's go again to a vote. All in favor of the substitute motion, which is 1C and 2, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, 3-3. Okay, so
So now we go
on
back
to the previous motion from Commissioner Melton, 1B, except for you're suspending it instead of terminating the full needs, and 2. Is that correct? And it's got a second. Any more discussion? No. Let's have a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone. Well done. Okay.
I would
Did you
like to
understand?
clarify, does suspend mean that the rate essentially goes to 0?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
And the purchases go to 0.
For the full needs.
for the
For
full
full
needs?
Right.
Yes, okay,
Got
got
it.
it.
Item number 5, selection of future potential topics for discussion. I know there was at least one.
I got one. Oh, you guys want to stick around for the future? Trust me. All right. So I'd like to add an agenda item to our next meeting that discusses a recommendation to the City Council on eliminating fees for solar PV and solar hot water systems in Palo Alto.
And what are you recommending?
I'm just agendizing it, so we can, I'd make a motion right now and do it, but I
No,
couldn't.
that's, okay, and any other future topics? It's,
Well, the question is, of course, do we need a vote to put it on or not? So what I'm saying, an agenda item to discuss a proposal to the City Council to eliminate solar PV and hot water system fees, the permit fees, sorry, permit fees.
So just, a quick comment. I mean, if you've already decided where you stand on the issue, maybe what you want to do is write a commissioner's
No.
memo. If you're going, let me finish. If you're going to agendize it as a topic,
Right.
I would propose that it's much more appropriate to agendize it as a review of the rates.
I don't think.
Of the rates for,
Rates or the permit fees?
sorry, the permit fees.
Permit fees are not part of CPAU.
But here's the problem I've got with what you're suggesting.
Right.
You're suggesting a discussion topic where you've already presumed the form of the answer.
Just for me, not for any of you. I mean, I'd love to sit around here and have a discussion on it now, but it would be not appropriate since it's not agendized.
No, I understand, and I respect you for doing that.
Right.
My point is, if we're going to agendize it as a discussion topic, as opposed to you just writing a memo to the city council and getting however many of us to join you in that memo as you want, isn't the appropriate topic to agendize a discussion of the permit fees and what the appropriate amount ought to be so that we can consider all amounts, including 0?
Oh, sure, yeah, that's fine. So, okay, if you want to rephrase it as, how did you just say it?
A discussion of the permit fees.
Of the permit fees for solar PV and hot
Solar,
water?
hot water.
A-okay.
I
love it.
would feel better about agendizing
I
that
feel better
than
about it, too.
agendizing.
I feel better
A
about your
discussion of it
proposal
being
than my
0.
proposal.
Thanks.
okay, any other potential discussion topics for discussion?
Yes. Well. Okay.
We have a
Yes. Well, but hold on.
We're not having a meeting
But hold
next
on a second. I don't need any, I'm not requesting any,
Am I supposed to tell you what the fee, am I supposed to provide the fee? I don't
You
even
don't
know
have to,
what the schedule.
it can be a discussion without a
it's just a
presentation.
discussion. Just a discussion. I mean, I'm sure, I'll dig up the,
Need to know the breakout.
I'll find the fees. I'll find the fees. I mean, it can't be. Peter, I'm betting you, Peter seems like a knowledgeable guy. I bet he can tell us the fees. I'll give him a call and get the fees. I'll send it
Okay.
around.
So we have a question from one of the commissioners for the director.
Send it to you.
When are we next agendizing EV readiness, EV grid readiness? I mean, are we just?
I will never forget.
Okay.
Let's see when it makes sense for them to come forward.
Great, thank you.
I will promise you, they're so overloaded right now because they're so understaffed right now. But
This is not
Okay.
something that has to happen in the next.
but for sure, yeah.
Yeah, and you can, okay, so we got that.
I want to know. So
Yeah, well, the community is showing.
Okay, we're almost done here. Any commissioner comments? Okay, the next scheduled meeting is September 4th. That's the Wednesday after Labor Day. Thank you all. Meeting's adjourned.